Same. Fly ball right field deep, way up there, way back there, and way out of here, up on the roof of the Frickers building. Off the Frickers building. Off the Frickers building. Off the Frickers building.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tiger Mountain Report podcast here at TigersMLReport.com. I am Roheli Castillo. Beside me is Brandon Day, and Chris Brown should be along shortly. And just wanted to, before we get to everything, just give our pay our respects and to Jim Weber, the voice of the Toledo Mudhens, who passed away, I believe, on Friday. And Jason Benetti did really good tribute to as well. I believe that was on Sunday's broadcast, and so you can check it out online. We'll put the link in there in case you missed it, but it was a really good job there with him and Andy Dirks describing the legacy and how much of it this guy called over 6,000 games in a row. Just, Brandon, we think about, I think about like often when I used to be in management before, when growing up, I used to run a pizza place, and when people called off, because my mom was like one of those people that like she broke her ribs and she still went to work. And I look at Jim Weber the same way. Like, just the guy was just it's just there's no word to describe it. It's more than amazing. It's just unheard of, man.
Yeah, it's kind of unfathomable to just go on and on and on like that and never miss a day. I mean, it certainly helps to love your job. And Jim obviously did, just had tons of passion for the game and, and the community of Toledo in general. And, the amount of story, you never know you find out. I guess what I'm saying is you find out about people a little bit more when they pass away. And it's often unfortunate that you didn't know some of these things in advance. But yeah, there's been a real outpouring of support for him and his family, and a lot of love and a lot of really interesting stories. I mean, they're sort of like the Bob Costas story. It just goes on and on with, people sharing anecdotes from his life. And, you could kind of feel people like catching their breath because it as far as I know, there wasn't any particularly dire health problems, known beforehand. So, he called the freaking game and then passed away that night. So yeah, just kind of a shocking thing. Like anybody who's ever listened to a Mudhens game basically, knows his voice. I mean, his voice is ingrained in any Mudhens fan's, brain the same way Ernie Harwell is, for me as a almost 50-year-old dude who grew up in the 70s and 80s. So yeah, really big loss for the Tigers organization and, the community of Toledo and the baseball community in general. And yeah, just a real drag. It's kind of just unreal to think of, just never missing a game like that, like always making it. Like the man never had laryngitis. The man fought through all these, all the usual things like colds and, everything else, and just was always there. So yeah, just a real bummer, unfortunately, real kind of sad note. And it, kind of coming right after, paying respects to Jim Leland, the day before for his great career too. You kind of feel like the legacy of that generation is starting to pass away and turn the torch. Obviously, Jimmy's still doing really well. It was great to see him. But it's just a reminder to appreciate the people who've done this the longest and appreciate their wisdom. Look for it when you can. Listen to their stories. And do the same thing with your own grandparents if you're out there. If you're a lot younger than me, probably. There's plenty of things I wish I would have asked my grandparents before they passed away, or before they, kind of got to the point where they couldn't remember so much about their childhood and things like that. You think you have forever, and you don't always. So yeah. Take that little bit of advice, and otherwise, just best wishes to the whole Mudhens family and Jim's family in particular, and friends, of which there seem to be thousands, which is cool.
This is I wanted to
play we should all do so well in the friend department.
Oh yeah, no, I mean from every single AAA team, Syracuse did a really nice job. It was just all the outpouring was great. Here's his final home run call at home. His final home run call This was Sunday the 28th.
Boom at third, Navigado at second, 1 out. The pitch to Torque is hit in the air to left field. Now it's pretty high, it's pretty deep. It's going to be gone. Spencer Torkelson has driven in 7 runs today with 2 swings of the bat. Wow.
So
nice.
I've not erased a lot of the sounds on my board, but this one will permanently
off the Frickers building.
Will take a whole new legendary level. So, but yes, that's just sucks. I've dealt with it's just
Go listen to the Mike Hessman breaking the minor league home run record. Go listen to that call. That was a classic. Yeah. He's got a bunch of them. There were some things I just didn't think about, but that was like, you don't often get that many like real historic moments in the minor leagues. Some of these accomplishments, like no offense to Gage Workman, but being the Erie SeaWolves all-time steals leader is kind of a dubious distinction, but the Hessman call was great. And there's a couple like that that he got to have in his career that were pretty cool.
Yeah, as well as again.
Hi, Chris. How's it going?
Yeah,
Chris, sorry. Yeah, it's been. I was running around doing some strange stuff in the attic just before the show, so. But I was looking. Yeah, I mean, I guess Toledo didn't become the Detroit affiliate again until 1987.
Yeah.
So he missed out on some Tram and Lou and those guys like that, but
he had Kirby Puckett though. I mean, Kirby Puckett, Kent Herbeck. There's some really good Twins prospects that he called up because Toledo was a Twins affiliate from I think from the time it was like the early 70s till 87 until 86, 87, because the Tigers Tigers were in Evansville till 84, then Nashville for a year or two.
2 years. Yep.
2 years, and then Toledo, right? I feel like there's somewhere in between that. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Score. Okay. Somehow here's the thing I don't understand. I can't remember why I leave a room. I can't remember where I put my keys, but I can tell you the Tigers were a AAA affiliate of the Nashville Sounds, where Matt Noakes played briefly, and the former Tiger Mike Laga played. It's something that I'm not proud of that sometimes, but I'm planning to get to. Of course, thank you for listening. Or by the way, I just wanted to do 2 more things too. One, first and foremost, July was our best month in terms of page views and downloads. So thank you for everybody who read an article or downloaded a podcast, and thank you to everybody who donated. We had some random donations last week, so thank you very, very much. And 2, another thing too, we're working on our top 30, but right now we're in a weird period with our top 30 right now. It's getting finalized, but there'll be stuff coming in the works with that. We're just trying to figure things out as we go forward with a couple of things. So we might be changing that up a little bit. So anyway, more on that a little later.
Tough, but it's tough right now because we're talking about top 30, and then I started going through and I was having a real hard time leaving a bunch of guys off, which I felt like was a good sign. So maybe you guys need to go 40, baby.
We could, yeah.
I
didn't consider that.
Yeah, it's a lot more work though. So that's not to say that I don't mind doing work.
It's just also easy for me to say.
Yeah, 50. I mean, Jerry won 50, I believe. So
yeah, I did too. Yeah, we both did our top 50s. But yeah, it's interesting where you can go to 50 and then you'll have somebody that's still not on your list that's on 2 other lists. You're like, whoops.
Yeah.
So
maybe we should go top 50. I didn't realize there was like a top 50 there. So I the limitations are the sky's the limit there. So, but let's start with the Tigers first and foremost, the Major League Club, as they lose 3 out of 4 to Kansas City. Yesterday's game was just a disaster in a sense of just Trevor Miller giving up that home run to MJ. Is it Melendez or Melendez? And it's one of those things where after the Tigers got 3 scoreless innings from Brant Hurdler, who got called up. He was called up, and he's number 15 on our prospect list. And went out there, threw basically his changeup, and again, this is where we've talked about this before. The biggest thing I was getting text about, is ERA is 5.80. So at this point, you kind of almost trust like the Tigers look at something else and whatever the case is, and so. But yeah, he went out there, pitched a really hell of a job. The bullpen has done a really good job except for Shelby Miller. And that's where it was just yesterday was a frustrating. And after Saturday's game where they came back and Winfield Perez with the game-winning hit and Parker Meadows with a great catch in center field, and he's back in there. And so you're seeing a lot of the Toledo elements of Toledo Erie from last year into the roster. And so I don't know, that it was disappointing the way that ended yesterday, and the Tigers are just 7 games under 500 as they head out to Seattle to start I believe a 4-game series. Is that right? Or 3-game series?
I don't know.
I think it's 2-3. I think it's 3. Yeah, 3 against Seattle and then 3 against the Giants. So
okay.
Yep.
So the old West Coast swing where the Tigers always thrive.
Yeah, that's they got Montero versus Castillo on Tuesday. So that will be an interesting matchup, especially Seattle just got a bunch of talent on their team. Wednesday, it'll be Skubal against Kirby. And on Thursday is TDB versus Woo. So that will be the
2 real starters in one series.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was,
nice. Little luxury.
The interesting thing about, so they had Salmons come up and give them what amounted to a start, 7+ innings of relief. And then they brought Herter up, and he's been nothing but a starter all throughout the minors, even though we kind of thought, like, okay, his ultimate role may be long reliever, maybe a lefty specialist type. And they brought him up, and like, all right, well, they're going to give him a chance to start. And then he was not even, like, he wasn't the opener, he wasn't the second reliever, he was the third guy. And I guess he did technically have the bulk relief there, but it was an interesting way to use him. I was kind of surprised the way they did it. It worked out.
Yeah, me too. And then it did. It's just that, you wish they just would have kept going, because, the bullpen is obviously, depleted. They didn't, obviously, AJ really didn't want to use Foley. I'm sure Shelby Miller wasn't like his ideal option there, but, not a whole lot left. Brisky hasn't been very good lately. He and Shelby Miller were part of the absolute meltdown on Friday after Tarek Skubal left the game. The two of them just, it was just a hit parade. It looked like Rick Porcello versus the Angels out there for a minute. And, throwback for people who remember that game, but
I do. I know exactly.
It was just kind of odd. Yeah, it was just just a parade of hits all in one inning. But I thought they'd kind of let Herter go because he was cruising. He looked really good. He was getting ground balls, and we've talked about this all year about how the strike zone has affected guys at Toledo's numbers, and so don't look too much at like the ERA, especially if a guy's walks are the problem. If a guy's giving up a ton of home runs like Ty Madden is, you've got more issues there. But there's kind of been an extra run added just by the fact that everybody's given up an extra walk or two per game down there. So you have to look deeper. We always tell you not to scout the stat line very hard and think that's going to be enough. So Herter kind of a classic example there, but if they would have just stretched him out another inning, they could have just had Vest close the thing out. Shelby Miller is like the least guy I want closing. I don't want the home run prone guy closing. It's fine to have a fly ball reliever. Joe Jimenez was a fly ball reliever in many ways, but Shelby just has not had the command to keep pitches out of the middle of the plate. And you could see that thing coming. I mean, Dirks was telling you it was coming too, you were watching the broadcast, it was just like, fastball down the middle, hanging splitter. And we're all like, oh, okay, this isn't good. And then, MJ Melinda steps to the plate and gets a big juicy meatball right down the middle. And as soon as I swear to God, as soon as that pitch left his hand, I was just like, oh God, I just knew, I was expecting it. So yeah. It sucks when they come out that way, especially after the night before. That was, one of the most inspiring come from behind victories I've ever seen from any Tigers team. Leaving aside like big games and playoffs and stuff like that, to come back in the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th with a bunch of rookies getting hits, and then Javier Baez coming through, which he has a little bit more lately with a huge knock that got the crowd just going absolutely nuts. The catch from Meadows, Justin Henry Malloy getting into a bad count and then just lashing one down the right field line for a double. It just went on. And hat tip to Hunter Renfroe for not catching Wenzel's ball because he probably should have. But super fun game. And then, real deflating. They probably should have scored more yesterday, obviously, too. But, they don't have Riley. They don't have Carp. It does sound like Carpenter is getting close to a rehab assignment at least, but not real sure what's going on with Riley. So, this is our lot for a little while, and going out to the West Coast for the next 6 games is probably going to be kind of fugly. It'll be nice for Scott Harris to go back to San Francisco and say hi to Farhan and whatever, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting though. Both teams are kind of in a like the Mariners are leading the division, and the Giants I think are 4th, and yet their records are only like 5 games apart, something like that. There's all those teams sort of clustered, while the AL Central dominates the American League. So yeah, the Mariners are trying to hold off the Astros, who got Kikuchi, but otherwise didn't really make any big moves. The Mariners made some pretty big moves to get a Rosarena, especially. So. They're in an interesting place right now, and that's a really good pitching staff. So that's going to be a real challenge for the Tigers. And then, the Giants didn't do a whole lot. They usually don't. They traded Soler away, and then they traded for Mark Canha. So I was like, if I was a Giants fan these days, I'd just be like, I'm sure there's some rage going on out there because this isn't what they're used to.
What is it, Chris? Oh, I think
you're no. I'm trying to update these slides. Well,
okay.
Sorry.
No, and no, it's right. No, I was just gonna say, and so Tyler Holton, just to get a number of indication of how good he's been since June. I went back to June 16th. He has allowed just 4 earned runs since then, and allowed 1 home run, in 27 innings of work since June 16th.
I think he's got a 21 and 2/3 innings scoreless streak right now. Yeah, he's on an absolute roll.
Yeah, I mean that's sorry to not be there and then cut in. But yeah, I mean that's the most annoying thing about all this is there's basically one good reliever right now. Everybody else it's reliever roulette. Like you don't know what you're going to get. You're spinning the wheel and hoping they don't give up 8 bombs. And then Holton is amazing, but they're using him as an opener like 4 times a week. It's like, and I don't necessarily blame Hinch for that. Like he's probably the best option a lot of the times to do that, but it's big. Just one thing begets another, right? Like the lack of starters is ruining the bullpen, and the bullpen is ruining the starters, and it's just it's ugly right now, man. And I'm curious what they're going to do in the offseason. I feel like Harris may overreact in the other way, ended up signing like 2 or 3 long-term reliever deals or something like that. But I don't know, maybe that doesn't really seem like
it would be ideal. I mean, if you look at even with the acquisitions too that they acquired with the guy from the Dodgers who the Tigers just blew up a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. I expected
Vanasco.
Vanasco. I expected a little bit of at least like something along those lines, and I'm glad they brought up her. But then same thing with like Sean Gunther was just like, okay, I mean, sure. I don't know that, and Hannafy makes a lot of sense. I mean, Hannafy could throw with velocity a little bit. I believe it has a heavy sinker too, and so it's just been a Basuda. Yeah, Bruschi has been Basuda as of late. That's a good way to picked up the trash reference there. No update on Lee, Adam. Unfortunately, there's not. Well,
he's hurt. He's injured. We're not supposed to tell you what it is.
Yeah, that's all.
He's not on the injured list, so there you go.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah.
So not dire. So
yeah. So
yeah, I mean, I think the thing about Holton is that it makes sense because you want to keep yourself in the game early so that you know who to use later, right? And that's kind of the theory. If you can get a couple innings into the game and you've built a lead, okay, then we go to the A squad. And if you're behind, you go to the B squad. And it's that decision-making chain, putting Holton there first. Someone's pointing out he's never really done that well in high leverage. This is true. He can mix stuff up so well that he does kind of work better as a starter than trying to come out in the 9th inning when guys are just absolutely taking rips against him, trying to come back and win the game. So I understand why they're doing that. Salmons was pretty impressive. That was cool to see for a guy who's never made it up before. Came up, gave them a huge outing. It didn't really affect the game necessarily, but it kept the bullpen in enough shape to win on Saturday. But things just aren't going to get better until they get a couple starters back here. And I don't really see any sign that Reese Olson or Casey Mize is very close to a rehab assignment yet.
Although I think
you'd be kind of seeing a little bit more. Mize threw a few bullpens, like he threw a bullpen to Meadows and Carpenter sometime over the weekend, maybe Friday or Saturday. So maybe he's getting close, but I don't know. I'm not really counting our chickens for another week or two at least until we see a rehab assignment. So
yeah, they were saying that
maybe it's for the best, you know.
Mize is not.
Let's just tank it out, boys.
I was just gonna say tank it out, or on the bright side, there is a bright side to this, of course, that Cole Keith being the AL Rookie of the Month, which is it puts him, I think, in the rookie that. Although, if you ask them, some people MLB, they don't put him on the list. That apparently is not consideration for AL Rookie of the Year, which doesn't make any sense to me. But whatever, each your own.
Yeah.
But you know, but then you look at like the AL Player of the Month in Bobby Witt Jr. Gentlemen, I know we don't talk about Bobby Witt Jr. enough on here, but the fact that here he is, in the calendar month of July, he had 44 hits with a 489 batting average. That is absurd because we've talked about this. Chris and I talked about the lack of the batting average.
Yes.
Like the days of seeing multiple players hit 300 throughout the season, or you don't see that very often as much as you used to. I remember, Tony. It was always like Tony Gwynn and like George Breton and AL. Just like there's always like 3 or 4 guys that always hit 300, and this guy did it for an entire month.
Yep.
But a 2.7 F WAR in 1 month.
Yeah.
That is you just think of it like that. It's just it's something that I don't have nothing. I mean, I've just never seen. And I mean, mind you, against the White Sox, part of it too, but still, who, by the way, the White Sox, we should do like days on, like I should put a graph of days since we've
won.
Oh, Michael thinks we talk about Bobby Witt Jr. a lot. I don't think we talk about him at all, but
I mean, we did on our last show, but
wait, what was I
on Motor City Metrics on Thursday?
Okay.
All 3 of us, we all spent all our goods were the Royals basically and Bobby Witt.
Okay,
so.
well, Michael, that's okay. Present, not me, but the rest of them probably. Yes, I wasn't there for that. I took the night off, but what was I saying? I just lost my train of thought now. All of a sudden.
So you want to put a sign up that says "Days since they won"?
Oh, it's days since we've done a podcast. We've done now, I think between Motor City Metrics, the draft show, they haven't won since the draft, right?
I don't think so. I mean, 20 straight losses. It's at least 3 weeks. So,
yeah.
Ooh, we've done. I think the equivalent of 8 to 9 shows since, and they haven't won a.
It's
I know. I hate to take pleasure in the downfall of our enemies, but in this case, I'll laugh about it as well. This is grim, man.
Yeah,
it's just not. Pedro Greifeld. It sounds like he knows he's getting fired already. It's pretty bleak.
So yeah, their last win was Wednesday, July 10th.
Wednesday, July 10th, and the draft was the 14th.
Almost a calendar month, because of the All-Star break. Yeah,
and there's I've been enjoying though, by the way, is watching Carlos Guillen or Ozzie Guillen after the game, just ripping them apart every time. He's like, afterwards, he doesn't have anything to say, but even the broadcaster was going out of his way. Like there's a game where I was watching a clip of him and he was going on and like I know you get paid by the team, but he sounded like everything was sunshine and roses, and it was just, ooh. Man.
He's trying to keep him positive so he can swoop back in there and take over the managerial chair yet again. Yeah, I was looking at that game and I just had in mind, like, I bet Eric Fetty and Luis Robert Jr. led them to victory that day, and it turned out to be true, actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fetty 5 scoreless innings, Robert home run. They won 3-1 over the Twins, and it's been like the anti athletics ever since.
Yes, and then
Scott Hatteberg coming to save them, I'm afraid.
And Jimenez is starting to hit in Baltimore, so it's kind of, you're wondering, okay, well, maybe Chicago is a problem, and I don't know, I don't really like. We have a couple of friends that are White Sox bloggers and everything. You imagine going out doing a prospect report on the White Sox right now.
I mean, and we've talked about it before, but like they don't even they can't get a top 10 pick because of their market size. So they've like you don't even have that to look forward to, like an all-time bad season, and you're not going to pick first overall or even in the top 5 or top 10. It's tough.
Oh my God. Yeah, Benetti did get out of town just in time. He's probably just sitting there like, yes, enjoy yourself, Jerry Reinsdorf. I'll chill over here in Tigerstown with all these hot young talents once they get a pitching staff back. Yeah, it's pretty bleak, you know. I mean, I know I've said this a million times, but yet there's just something rotten at the core there. It just never works out. I swear to God, we're gonna see Eloy Jimenez come out with like a absolutely shredded 6-pack, looking like Randy Arozarena, and some story about how he did 10,000 sit-ups in his hotel every series and blah blah blah, and just start crushing 500 footers all over the place. And I do have a couple White Sox friends. I lived in Kalamazoo for over a decade, and so I've got Chicago fans, and I lived in the Chicago area a bit myself. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to have some sympathy, but at this point, I do not. So, we had 7 years of this.
Yeah,
deal with it for a little bit.
Yeah, look, I mean, I know they won a World Series in 2005, but no one. It seems like history's forgotten about that. Like every time I mention, well, it seems like people forgot the White Sox won a World Series. I mean, of course, the Cubs. A curse. I mean, they both broke curses. But
and it was the year after the Red Sox. Yeah. And the Red Sox stayed good, and the White Sox just kind of went. I mean, the White Sox were okay there. They were, competing with the Tigers for most of the time, at least in the early part when the Tigers were going for division titles. But then they always seemed to choke it away at the end.
Yeah.
Tyler.
Fish.
Here's the thing. I like the White Sox. I've always liked the White Sox because of the Cuban player aspect of it. So for me, it's like just the amount of Cuban talent has that, even Latin player talent throughout the last 25 to 40 years. I mean, even going back to, if you want to go to the go-go Sox days of the 50s with Lewis, I can never see his last name correctly. The shortstop out of I can never say his name right.
I'm terrible at this. I have no idea.
Yeah, but then again, like I said, just Minnie Minosa.
It was like Louis Alexis, but that's I think 100 years ago.
Yeah, but no, it's one of those. It's again the amount of, and then you had Carlos Fernandez, Alexei Ramirez. Yeah, that was another one too. On Uribe.
Yeah, it is a year anniversary. I'm sorry, I got to point out that year anniversary of the punch to Tim Anderson. Like that was just like the ending blow. It really did kind of finish them off. Tim Anderson's career went like straight in the toilet, and Yoan Moncada's basically been hurt ever since. I mean, we all remember Yoan Moncada was, maybe the most highly regarded prospect of the last 10 years, other than maybe like one or two other guys. Just turned out to be a pretty good player, nothing special. Just Dylan Cease is already gone. All these dudes, Lucas Giolito, that era was like gone. So yeah, they're back to square one for sure.
So the shortstop I couldn't think of who is in the Hall of Fame is Luis Aparicio.
Louis Aparicio.
Thank you. Who was voted into the, actually, ironically enough, he was voted into the Hall of Fame in 1984. So, it was a Gold Glove shortstop, was just 9-time Gold Glove shortstop, 13-time Hall of Famer, and a WAR of 55.9 career overall. And that was who I was thinking of. Thank you, everybody. It was just those are the team. But anyways, the amount of Latin talent that's come through the South Side of Chicago has always impressed me. And so growing up, it was one of those things where seeing like Alex Fernandez, who's another Cuban pitcher, it's just again, even like just it's really cool. But they're but also they suck at team building, so that's their own fault. I mean, truthfully, it's when you hear Jerry. I think what really set me over the edge was Ryan. Those comments that went out last year from Reinsdorf, where he basically said, "Well, as long as the team is," and I'm paraphrasing, as long as the team's somewhat competitive, you can still make a profit and fans will come out. So they basically said, "I like half-assing it to be cheap." I mean, that's essentially the way I interpreted that, and so to me, it's like why bother?
Which is especially weird for a dude who had the Bulls, the collection of championships he has, and at his age, you'd think he'd just be all in. What's he hoarding his money for now? Like this is deranged. But it's a culture thing with them. Yeah, it really is. There's just something rotten, man. It goes all the way back to Sale and the jerseys, and before that, they just never seem in harmony. There's all those. Who was the guy? The guy who brought his son to the field, and everyone got kind of mad about it. Yeah, Adam LaRoche. Like those kind of things are just weird. It's like there's just whatever you want to say about AJ Hinch, I just cannot imagine those things happening on his watch. Like they just don't communicate over there. What's the matter, White Sox? You got to talk to each other, bro. You got to empty your feelings out sometimes, and get down to the root of the problem, work it out.
There was a joke I made with Chris about Kenny Williams Jr. Ken Williams Jr. is probably the one of the most greatest. I don't want to say con men because he was a good GM at one point, but he's still. I believe he still works for the team. That guy. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah,
I thought he was fired, but I don't. Maybe he
does
still
something
doing
else
something
now
with
the
them.
team. Like I think he does a senior advisory role. That guy, for having a so-so playing career, has done he's bulletproof. He has ciphered more. He's probably made more money off Jerry Reinsdorf than anybody else ever. I mean, it's just the fact that he's still around the organization, even with all the bad communication you're talking about, Brandon, and all the crappy, the fact that Andrew Mantaneri is I think the biggest contract deal they've ever signed is laughable, considering that they've had at some point, you had Frank Thomas, you had some of these great talents, and you just pissed it all away. I mean, it is ridiculous. And there's right. Javi Baez in our chat said that them in Oakland never give out $100 million contracts. Yeah. This is the same team that when Magglio Ordonez had this knee, and again, granted, the knee issues that Ordonez had were he had to go out to Europe to get a second opinion and all that. But the White Sox were like, no, we can. And then he goes out and as a division rival, and that's fine. Hey, it worked out for Detroit just fine. So thank you for your cheapness, Jerry. I appreciate it.
Yeah, things just it just always there's just some atrophy over there. It always however good they get for a little bit, it just always collapses. So, so be it. All right, I don't want to talk about the White Sox anymore.
Yeah, we've done White Sox bashing for a while, but I like
just bury them.
Yeah, I like that. What he says, the Sox are like the latter days of Al Davis's Raiders. That's a good way to put it there. So, all right, moving on.
It just feels similar somehow. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's pretty bad. But moving on, if there's any other MLB stuff I wanted to get to, if there's anything else you guys want to address before we get to the minor leagues, Dylan, I mean, the Padres right now are. I did want to mention the Padres because, I mean, it's worth mentioning Dylan Cease being a beast and the no hitter and everything too. But Blake still plays or pitches for San Francisco. But I wanted to mention the Padres because there is one of those teams at the trade deadline that emptied out the farm system. And Brandon, I wanted to get your take on this because this is a franchise that right now sits just a four games back of the Dodgers right now, and they've won 8 out of the last 10. I don't know. Do you like their trade deadline acquisitions?
I mean, I just don't understand what they're doing over there. Like AJ Preller is really good at getting talent, like getting young talent, but then it's just they just fumble the bag. They make a bunch of big deals, every year. They traded Soto. It just I don't want to put them in the White Sox category where there's just something intrinsically wrong in the organization, but there kind of is. Preller is known to meddle quite a bit. Former managers have really had a hard time with him coming into the clubhouse and like giving rah-rah speeches and like interacting with players directly and going around coaches, all that stuff. And all that kind of meddling just creates, a lot of confusion, a lot of factionalism in an organization. And that's the only thing I could really, kind of pin that all to, because I mean, he drafts well. They made good deals in the past and collected a bunch of players. I mean, the deal where they traded Shields, like the Shields for Fernando Tatis Jr. deal should have set them up as a franchise for the next run with the farm system they had behind that. And they just kind of keep just fumbling it away, and they never play, real, I hate to be this guy, but it is kind of getting more this way where teams all know what they're doing, and the psychology, the team building, like the attitude that has to be, unified on the team, all that is becoming, I think, more valuable now because, there's 20, 25 teams. We're all, pretty close together in terms of analytics and, and evaluating players, all those different things. Finding those edges is difficult. And they just seem to have like an unending series of little conflicts and and spats going on there that just undercuts the whole organization. So I don't know. I mean, good for them. They went out and got some talent and they try, and I appreciate the team trying. I'd love to see us try. That'd be so neat. But it's kind of the same thing. Right? Preller just does not seem to be able to close the deal. He was best suited as a scout. He should be running someone's scouting department, maybe ours. And he could work under Mark Connor.
Well,
and
I mean,
and that's where he's suited. He's
Herter was the first member of the Tigers 2021 draft class to reach the majors. Jackson Jobe hasn't done it yet. Ty Madden not quite, and Pacheco and so forth. And I was looking, and the Padres have already had 6 players reach the majors from that draft. You can't yell at them for going out and getting Juan Soto, right? He's one of the best players in baseball, and then they made a run with it, and then they traded him back. But there are times I do think it makes sense where if you've got like a James Wood in your system, maybe just keep him. If you've got Tatis and you've got other young talents, you've got Machado and everybody, Xander, they signed all these people, and it is a strange mix of a lot of talent and not a lot of success, and it's hard to quantify. And I think that is they're the bizarro version of the White Sox, right? Like all the talent is there, and they don't seem to have this. Good.
Yeah, Manny's Manny's getting older. Xander Bogaerts is in his prime now, but he's I think 28 or 29 maybe. I might be wrong about that. But the guys they signed the big deals to are older, and they keep letting go of their top hitting prospects, and it's just like where's this going to leave you in a couple of years? And I don't know, maybe they just figure they can keep drafting the way they have, but I don't know. It feels like they just never put a quality team together. And I think all of us would highly respect Bob Melvin as a manager. He should just be in charge, and it just feels like they're meddling with him. Bob Melvin doesn't seem real happy. He's probably happy to have a team where he'll have some of the same guys, for a couple of years. But it's weird. They've got a good manager, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best. So,
as I recall, just like growing up, the Padres under Kevin Towers in those days too, they had a trade because it was so weird because they kept trading so they could keep their salary down, and here they are adding salary, and this is, I don't know. To me, I think the biggest thing about the trade deadline, and we'll get to, I was comment about Dylan Dingler, I do want to get to, but I was just kind of curious because the Padres did the opposite of what the Tigers did as they are in the other farm system. And so just to kind of see the difference in styles with it and seeing how it's paid off for them so far, if it's going to pay off for them or not long term, 2008. They were talking about the 2008. Tyler mentioned the 2008 Tigers, all that talent to finish in last place. That year, I remember having so much expectations. That was my first. I remember I was moving back from Grand Rapids, and I was excited because I get to watch Tigers, and again locally, and so it was just. I don't know what happened there, but anywho, we'll see.
Can I do one more tie-in? One more tie-in with the Padres is that AJ Preller has always been super heavy prep guy, right? And so now we have Mark Connor. The Tigers have gone super heavy prep the last 2 years, and it's getting harder and harder to get, as we've heard from various experts. Less and less of the prep talent is going to sign going forward, or even the last year, because now there's the NIB money. There's just different things making that harder to come by. So the fact that the Tigers really, really went hard prep the last 2 years makes me feel very good about the future. And I think if fans, look at who they've, who's worked out, Riley Green, prep pick, Jackson Jobe, best pitching prospect in baseball, Colt Keith, 5th rounder, looking like AL Rookie of the Year. So, it's hard to get the, if you're not picking at the top, you're not getting the handful of okay, this college guy is the best college hitter in the country. Fine. We tried that. Hasn't gone that well. And so, I feel overall, without breaking down the individual players, and people might Rainer, they might not like him as much, whatever. But, from a kind of 20,000 foot perspective, the Tigers really have gone the right direction the last 2 years with this. And I think that bodes pretty well for the 2 draft classes. And with, as we'll get to, Clark and McGonigal doing this well, Ham, a bunch of guys, it's all looking pretty good. So that's kind of where I take off from the Padres, is that the Tigers kind of took some of the best part of their strategy over the last years and have probably implemented it better the last 2 years than they have. And, the Tigers don't have any real long-term commitments other than to Javi and Cole, I guess, if you want to call that much of a commitment. So, yeah, when I think of the Padres, I think of, that was a good deal to snag Mark Connor and, get Metzler. And the whole thing seems to be coming together pretty well in the draft side of things. I think Scott Harris is doing a excellent job collecting talent for the farm system. Now he needs to build a major league roster that can win something.
That is the
goal now, Scott.
I was just saying, in other words, just let them do their job and have meddle with it. There's no reason to meddle with it when it works. So
let them cook.
Let them cook. So we're gonna let Toledo cook here. I'm just gonna take this down. There's a couple new players on the roster who have made a quick impression already, and that was Trey Sweeney, who came over in the Dodgers deal. 7 for 14, 2 home runs. It was just seeing the ball, left-handed swinging bat from him. So then the question is, does he come up with all the shortstop situations right now? By the way, the Tigers or the Mudhens this week are playing Jacksonville, which is the jumbo ship, which doesn't happen very often. So I'm actually going to go out to the game on Wednesday and check that out. But the arms right now, there is a short supply of them, Chris, and there's not really a lot of reinforcements coming up from Erie either. And that's kind of startling a little bit, considering that Erie's rotation is kind of a veteran-laced one there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the trickle down from the big league club, right? Like they've called up, most of the reserve arms. Lockhart is still down there in Toledo, and he could come up to the big leagues. But yeah, there's they didn't have 8 starters in Toledo. Maybe earlier in the year they might have, but so now they're scrambling too. They're calling people up. They brought up some reserves for some reinforcements from West Michigan for a little bit, just in case, and then send them back. But yeah, I don't know really what they're going to do. I think we may see a few more, waiver wire signings, guys who are getting released. I think we're probably coming up in the next week or two from the kind of annual purge. Teams start cutting guys as the new draft picks and undrafted free agents start signing. And so we may see a few more players picked up like that. But it's going to be a scramble for the Mudhens too. They don't, I don't know if they have AJ Hinch back there pushing the buttons. They got Tim Fedorovich or whatever. Maybe he's just as good, but fortunately it's the minor leagues and it doesn't matter. So you don't, you're like, I'll just go ahead and push a bunch of relievers.
Well, and they lost their starting catcher in Dingler, who, I thought has done a pretty good job so far. He's only played a couple games, but we know he's good behind the plate, took some good swings. That they've got to miss that as far as their pitching staff goes. And yet, the last 3 games, they actually pitched pretty well. The offense swung the bats well, but actually that's not so true. No, it was just the offense. Okay, forget it. They barely survived. They were just smashing. It was Riley Unroe, Torque, and Trey Sweeney coming through. It was pretty much all that. So yeah, it's pretty grim there in the pitching department as well. And it doesn't really look like there's anybody that if they didn't call up Andrew Vasquez at any point this year, they haven't called up Devin Sweet. I just don't think and I don't either really, just, they don't see those guys as much of an answer. So yeah, they're in the same situation. All that really matters right now down there is, Sweeney, Torkelson trying to figure it out, and Jace Young really, and hopefully Ty Madden can find some answers, and maybe Lockhart can find another tick or two somewhere and be good at the major league level at some point, or useful. So yeah, it's kind of grim at you.
I did watch Ben's last start against Indianapolis, and he was cruising pretty well. And then it was about the 5th where he's got hit a little hard, where he a lot of home run to Henry Davis, and he was able to, on his execution of his breaking balls on the left on lefties, he was doing pretty well. It's just when he was trying to get a fastball in there, it just cannot. He still struggles with that. It's the biggest thing that I know about Madden, and what makes it really frustrating sometimes too is that his breaking, when he has a curveball going along with his fastball, it's really good. I mean, it's really, really good. And he had a no-hitter going through, I think it was 4 innings, and then it's just, but for whatever reason, it's just when you try to get him on any lefties, center cut, boom, gone. And so that's where I love to see the Tigers. This is where we talked about this before, where he has that reliever risk kind of thing to him. I have to look at the numbers of how he does the 3rd time through the order, because it's just, he can dominate very well. And I was wondering if he can just air it out or anything. And so I don't know. It's just, he has the makeup to be really good, and it's just, and sometimes you're just looking at him just like, oh, so. But
and he's not necessarily like wild or anything like that. It's just like it's just his shapes are inconsistent, and when he tries to throw down to a left-hander, it always seems to just run right back out over the middle. There's just the same pitch that comes up again and again for him, where he's looking pretty good most of the outing, and then all of a sudden you see like back-to-back like flat fastballs, right down the middle, or he hangs something, and it's been weird because it hasn't even been the lefties this year. It's right-handers have been killing him too. So I don't know. He's just a little bit of a mess, and maybe the stuff just isn't that good. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It's not consistent enough, but maybe ultimately he's just not capable of throwing his best stuff enough to start. And so you might as well try him in the bullpen then.
I don't know, Chris. Do you still think he has a reliever list to him?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was a reliever. Like heading into the season, I thought he was probably a long-term reliever. I keep comparing him to Funkhauser, but yeah, I don't know. Like we've seen all those different, just it seems like every pitcher that comes up from Erie gets bombed in Toledo, and then they go to the majors and it's not quite as bad. It's not necessarily always great. We've seen Montero have his ups and downs. But yeah, there's something about Toledo AAA this year that's really rough. We've heard all sorts of stuff about Madden before, that he actually he works too hard in between starts. And then, like, it's kind of reminiscent of Casey Mize. Like, he just works his butt off and then doesn't have it all for what he needs on the starts, which might be reason why he kind of falters down the stretch. And all things being equal, you'd rather have that than a guy who, lollygags or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the arm talent has always been in there, but we are seeing it come to fruition, that the concerns about him in the draft that led him to slide, that led other teams to pass on him because of the fastball shape. We thought the Tigers had kind of addressed that a little bit by altering his mechanics and changing his arm slot, but sometimes you are who you are, and it catches up to you eventually.
So, by the way, I put my article in there I did an article on Spencer Torkelson. We can address that real quick now. So I first and foremost, I didn't know about this guy until yesterday. And so there's a guy out there who is the Aaron Judge swing master coach, apparently. And so yesterday I posted a video. Teacher man. Yeah, teacher man, with a bunch of initials. I have no idea what they mean, and I don't really care.
Nothing.
They mean nothing. Yes, they do mean nothing. So I wanted to show this thread, and then because some people, not everybody's on Twitter. So what I wanted to present was Spencer Torkelson, and I was looking at what he was doing and seeing if there's any type of changes, because the biggest thing is people were saying, oh, well, there's a toe tap thing and all that. So apparently, because I didn't have this timed up right, apparently, but if you look at his swing right here, it's just wanted to show right here, in terms of his bat path, like in terms of just his shoulder. And I'll give a lot of props to Jeff Pontus of Baseball America, who was helping me out with this too. I thought something looked different. Like if you look at his bat placement here, well, there you go.
Yeah, on the right, you can see how steep that bat gets and how his hands are a little bit further away from him. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is from May, and this was from yesterday, or I believe, it was Sunday. Yes. So then I posted another video in real time, so that way people could know that I wasn't changing or manipulating anything, which kind of bothered me, because it was this guy right here was saying that, of course, it's time to look through the zone. It's different when your editing makes it look different. No, because then if you speed it up here, I feel like I'll do the JFK back and to the left here.
Mantle had tears in his eyes. He was
Teacher Man is yelling at you on Twitter about this?
Yeah, he was yelling at me because he said I didn't do it right. But here's the again.
Fly ball left field.
Yeah, maybe I suck at video editing a little bit, but dude, you're a dick, essentially, is what I say. I don't care how vulgar that sounds. But anyway, so there's some slight differences there. And in the article I went into, and thanks to Chris on helping me on doing some homework on this too, but he is hitting better. He is hitting better against advanced velocity, but it's still, you in terms of off speed, and this is something that Chris discovered, and he is -4 run value against changeups. Off speed pitches, he's only got 3 career home runs against. There is improvement there. Don't get me wrong. And that's fine. It's just, I think the Tigers are looking at these things in between and going, look, If he can't breaking balls, he has to fix those issues still. And I think that's what the case is. I mean, I'm not trying to poo-poo Spencer Torkelson. There are some signs there that are showing improvement. The swing mechanics we just saw a witness of. But at the same time, I think with Scott Harris and those guys, they're going to sit there and be hypercritical of this, because if you're not, if you can't field your position too, and maybe defensively, but I think the hitting metrics have to a little bit stand out a little bit, have to be a little louder to me.
Well, he can't just, I mean, we've seen him hit major league pitching. He can, like, he's physically capable of it. He has the eye, he has the hands, he has the power. So, but yeah, I mean, they should be pushing for more, to not just be even the guy that we saw last year, but to be a much more complete hitter. And they at least they seem to be sticking to their guns. I assume we'll probably see him in September, but they haven't been any hurry to call him up when he's had a couple good games in a row or anything like that. And it's still been up and down, where he has like a good game and then it's like, 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts, or, 0 for 5. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they just want to see more consistency and more consistent hard contact. It does look like to me like he's trying to get he's like a little more balanced in his swing, in his lower half. He's trying to get a little bit more rhythm and a little bit of lateral motion, which you need to, to extend the bat through the hitting zone and keep it on plane for more than just like a flash while you're, flying open. So, you can see a little bit of what he's trying to do, but it still doesn't, I don't know. I still don't see a ton, and maybe we won't. Maybe it won't look that different if he figures it out. I don't really know. So,
yeah, I don't know, man. Like I am an extreme skeptic at this point. I think one of the hallmarks of a successful big league hitter is being able to make those adjustments at the big league level in a time frame that doesn't involve months. Like maybe the best hitters do it in between at bats. Other guys can figure it out in a week or two, maybe less. This is the second time in 3 seasons where Torkelson has had to go to AAA because it's just not working in the big league level. And you can you can dig into the numbers a billion different ways. Like we were looking, this year he's hitting far more fly ball, like pop-ups. The exit velocity is lower, the launch angle is higher. Like, so something with his timing is causing him to hit the ball in the air more. But yeah, like Raj said, we looked it up and I was curious. And there were 191 hitters who have seen at least 500 off-speed pitches over the last 3 seasons, and Torque is dead last in weighted on base average, slugging, batting average. And if you want a right-handed power hitter, part of that is you want him to mash left-handed pitching. If you're not hitting off-speed pitches, you're probably not mashing left-handed pitching. He's got a 105 WRC plus, which is fine against left-handed pitching, but you want that to be about 70 points higher, right? So listen, everybody can be hopeful. There's a reason he went 1-1. Scouts loved him at the time, back in the day. I don't know if I've ever told this story. Maybe I have. That there were. We listened to a scout who was out there in Arizona watching Arizona State take on Oregon State, and this would have been 2019. And so, everybody's there to see Adley Rutschman, and he claimed that the best player on the field that day was Spencer Torkelson, way better than Adley Rutschman. They thought that he was just going to be an absolute monster in the pros, and that wasn't like, there's a lot of scouts, and it just hasn't worked. And to me, it's always been that same issue where it's the sameness of the swing, it's the inability to adjust, it's giving away the outer third of the plate, it's it's just, I don't know. I don't know if he needs to twist in the wind down there in Toledo more. If he needs to absolutely, like, if he starts dominating, then you can bring him up, right? If he's hitting 450 with power, bring him up. He's figured something out. But I mean, he's still rocking like a 30% strikeout rate at AAA right now. So I think there's still plenty of things to work on there, in addition to the defense, which has always been bad.
Yeah, I mean, you just contrast that to Colt Keith, who is making adjustments every game, from pitcher to pitcher, to seeing the way they attack him, changing his timing mechanism a little bit when he's off, watching his swings every night and being willing to adjust and make a change. And Torkelson just does not really seem to want to change. He just seems to want this to just click. That word keeps coming to mind, like, oh, well, it's all just going to snap together and I'll be the dude I was in college. And, I can't say he's not working hard enough. I don't know if that's the case, but he's not working smart enough. That's for sure. They'll figure you out, and you just kind of have to keep, rolling with it and making some changes. And we've seen Malloy do some of that already too. And, I mean, I think we all probably were in agreement, by like 2022 that Colt Keith was a much better pure hitter than Spencer Torkelson. You still hope Spencer Torkelson would hit tons of home runs and it would be okay. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a classic grooved slugger swing, and he just doesn't seem to be able to make the adjustments or changes to get out of the death spiral here.
I mean,
so yeah, don't be optimistic about Spencer Torkelson.
And there's certain people, here's Fuller, that was mine, that were very, very sure, and that people like us didn't know what the hell we were talking about. And, what do you guys know? Blah, 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 blah. And it's not like it's like a whole I told you so thing. It's not even like that at all. I want Spencer Torkelson to be a productive player. He has struggled at every level, and there's been time where he was rushed up to get up here. It's as simple as that. That's facts. That's not opinion. That's facts. And I think what the Tigers are doing is letting him go down there and just not rush him back up because they don't see them needing it. I mean, and Larry, yes. Do you want the Tigers want to tank so they can pick more high school players? No, because they can't. I mean, the odd,
they're going to pick more high school players no matter what, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Not to mention Harris. I don't think, and I think YouTube user hit right on the head. He doesn't think Harris is a Torque fan, and I think there's more people in the organization that feel that way that may not be visible to it. I don't know. But I know this. I know one thing. One thing is certain: when you're a right-handed power hitting player and you can't hit off speed, I mean, come on. I mean, that's just, to me, if you're supposed to be a guy that's getting compared to Paul Konerko and you can't hit, I don't know. There's something about that too. Like I know, again, if Torkelson was in this lineup with a healthy Kerry Carpenter and he was doing what he was doing last year, Tigers would be in a different position altogether. But woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yep.
If my grandmother had wheels, she would have been a bike.
Yeah.
If people want to feel better, it's the thing to feel better about is that he was never going to be that big of an impactful player anyway, and getting a first baseman is not, as we said, not the hardest thing to do. If you can't figure out the first base situation without him, you got a problem, because frankly, Blind Madrid right now is doing a better job. So we're like perfectly content for the moment. You can find a guy, find a bat.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I was looking earlier, like the options out there, like, who strikes me as a very potential ad next year would be Wilmer Flores, the older, the he's having a bad year, but he's played third base, second base, first base before. You bring him in as a cheap contract this year's Urshela or whatever, and you give Torque kind of one last chance to win the job. But if he doesn't, you got a replacement there that was cheap. Yeah. But you could also just say screw it and go sign one of the. Yeah, you could. Incaviglia, I think
he walked better. I mean, to be fair, Torque walks a lot too. So.
Now wait, did you see that there was a question earlier from Old BK? Did you get that one? He actually donated.
I'm gonna get it right now. I was gonna just save it here. Thank you for the $4.99 there, Old BK, following the format. Appreciate that. Let me find my
that ball is gone.
Wait, what am I doing?
Off the Frickers building.
Old BK with the $4.99. Thanks for the question. If you had to bet your own money on whether Torque is long-term Tiger, what odds would you need? So I'm not sure how. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I'm not a big gambler either, so I don't know how any of that works.
How about this? I would say this. The odds that are about this, I don't see him in a Tigers uniform in 3 years. Maybe less than that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would agree that
I'll give him a.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I'll give him a 20% chance that he plays a full season for the Tigers ever again.
Yeah, I say it's 50-50. He's on the team next year, and 25% in 2026. I don't know what betting odds those are, but yeah,
they're not. Yeah, it's a long shot. That's what I'm telling you. Maybe not like an insane long shot, because I just keep thinking like, maybe he goes into the off season and he's just mentally broken down and finally realizes like, all right, I've got to start from scratch, like body, brain, swing mechanics, the whole thing. Maybe, I never hate, I just don't want to bury a guy. He obviously has some talent. He obviously has power. He's hit a couple home runs that, left the bat slightly slightly faster than Kevin McGonigal's home run the other day. So that's just me being a smart ass. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. But I wouldn't say I'm like completely done. But yeah, I mean, I think we're in a situation where like if something major doesn't change this offseason and he comes out looking like a completely different dude next year, yeah, it's pretty much a wrap.
Somebody mentioned in Discord it was a trade that makes perfect sense on paper, and it was Jordan Walker for Spencer Torkelson. And that sounds like a Cardinal thing, the most St. Louis thing to do possible. You know what I mean?
Well,
like, just
I think Goldschmidt is a free agent after the year. Now, I would, if I were them, I'd probably just move Gorman to first, but maybe they're done with the Gorman. I don't know. But yeah, we've talked about that before. That would you're trading Torkelson for somebody else's distressed asset, like a Henry Davis. Like, what could it hurt?
Larry, we're not saying that
just kind of a challenge trade.
Larry is saying the 3,100 was a 12 fluke. We're better than that. We're not saying that the 3,100 was a fluke. It wasn't. We're not saying that at all. But it's just the vibe. Like essentially going down to the clubhouse, when you hear some of the things we hear, it's just the overall impression is that if they really wanted Torkelson back up here, he would be up here. That's the point. I mean, you've called up everybody but Torkelson. I mean, it's the same thing with like it shows, like, for example, Andrew Navigado. Navigado's hitting really well against a high velocity. Navigado's doing everything he can, but they're just like, no, we're good. They you know what I mean? Like, so it's I'm not saying this because we have a personal bias against Spencer Torkelson. It's just if the organization's telling you how you feel, if they're calling up everybody else but you. I mean, so.
No, there is that, and that also it's not a fluke. Yeah, I mean, nothing is a fluke. If you did it, you did it. But we've got 1 year out of 3, and the first year was pretty bad, and the third year was terrible. And again, like Chris pointed out, he can't fix himself when he's out of whack. It's like some kind of like finely calibrated dinger machine that if the ball is like right here, hip high on the inner third. When he's dialed in right, he might hit a lot of those pitches out, but he's still, there's no sign of him like spraying the ball hard to the opposite field or doing any of those hitterish sort of things that you'd like to see to believe that there's some potential there. So again, I'm not burying him entirely. I'm just saying that the odds of him figuring it out are not real good right now, I don't think.
Yeah, well, and I will say that, yeah, like I'm not saying it's a fluke. I'm saying we've got 150 plus games of Torque hitting like he did last year, which is 230 average with 30 home runs and 90 RBIs and bad first base defense, which got him to be almost worth 1 WAR, I think, with slightly more than 1 WAR. And 2+ years, 2 years, basically the same amount of games of him being a like 201 hitter with no game power or not enough game power. I don't know if it's a fluke. We know that it's in there, but there have been plenty of players in baseball history who put up sort of impressive power numbers and then don't do it again. It happens. I'm not saying it's a guarantee.
Perfect example.
Kevin Moss, when I was a kid, was like the toast of the town in New York. Hit like 25 home runs in 70 games or something like that for the Yankees. Hit a 20 again the next year. Never did anything after that. Who was remember Aristides Aquino? With the Reds a couple years ago, hit like 14 home runs in his first 15 games. And sometimes guys, if you can't adjust, everybody has weaknesses. Every hitter has weaknesses. You heard Hench the other day talking about, they thought that the one place they could get Bobby Witt out was fastballs up. And that used to be the Mike Trout weakness, right? And it's relative, right? Their weaknesses are still an ordinary person's strengths. But if you have weaknesses, the other teams will find them and they will exploit them to no end. And if you can't adjust, then what you've done is going to be a fluke because they'll just, unless they make 1,000 mistakes, you're not going to be productive. So I don't know. We just need to see more from Torque. I need to see more on AAA. And when he comes back up, I need to see more from him in the big leagues before I'm a believer that he can continually do it. Brennan Bosch, I see people mention Chris Shelton. Like, there's a Ryan Rayburn.
There's a bunch of guys every year like this. Yep.
Yeah.
Not with the Tigers, but league wide. There's just always going to be some guys who are like hot and they kind of get figured out. And if you can't make the adjustments, it's a wrap. It's a wrap for you.
All right.
Anyway,
let's move on to Erie and Portland. And so the SeaWolves on a 2-week stretch here where they're on the East Coast. Take on probably one of the better. I will say this: Portland was one of the best teams I watched all season.
Yeah.
That team is loaded. They got Kyle Teal, who is if you didn't know Kyle Teal was a catcher, just based off his speed alone on the base path, he's just a quick guy out of the box. He's a fun watch. Of course, Blaze Jordan, Meyer. It was not a lot of weak spots in the lineup, and then the outfielder who I thought the Tigers might have. There was some sort of weird Boston rumor that was out there. I think the center fielder's name.
Yeah, they have Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell. They brought up a kid named Earhart who just came up and was really good too. Like, that lineup was absolutely stacked, and that's kind of it's a stadium that's built sort of to look like Fenway. I don't think it has the crazy pesky pole right field or very deep in right center, but it has the kind of mini monster. And it was a bit of a launching pad this week. Even the SeaWolves were hitting, but they couldn't really stop Portland from hitting.
Yeah, no matter what, that was a team that it was no quit, and even defensively too, made some really good plays out there. And the SeaWolves just ran into a really just far superior team. And although there were some good individual performances, we mentioned earlier, Hayu Lee is out with an injury. Again, we can't go into what exactly that is, but he's out. There was some bullpen help in the forms of Tyler Owens, Eric Sylvia, the new guys who they came over in the trades. Also, Liam Hicks, who really had a good debut. He came over in the Carson Kelly deal. But Chris Myers and Jay Colton just kind of holding his own, doing his own thing. And then the Jackson Jobe start, ladies and gentlemen, that was a strange start because the strike zone was atrocious. One of the worst strike zones I've seen at all. I mean, it was just, there was a call that was clearly a strike. Blaze Jordan knew it. He was walking back and they're like, no, that was a ball. Or, what? And then even the balk call was even strange. But that whole start was strange.
It wasn't. He did look out of rhythm a little bit. Like, I didn't, it definitely wasn't his best work. However many, strike calls he kind of got jobbed out of, and there were a few. But we've seen this lots of times, and he fights through. It was just a better lineup, probably combined with those, those factors. But I was just happy to see him push. Like, I just want him in trouble and stressed, and getting used to what that feels like and how to push through it. Because that's the thing that, no one's really been able to do for him yet, is to keep him in traffic, multiple innings in a start, and force him to pitch through it. There's usually like one inning like that in the start, and then the rest of the time he's just mowing everybody down. So you want him to pitch well, but I also don't mind, because this is why I keep pushing them to move him to Toledo and get on with things, because I just don't see him being tested very much. And it's not like they crush the ball all over the park or anything like that, but they were at least able to square up some fastballs and lay off some tougher pitches that most teams at that level just cannot lay off of. So not ideal, but it's got to happen. He's got to struggle somewhere. We got to get to that point so we can learn how to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think you made the point there that a lot of the hits were not hard hit balls. I mean, he wasn't getting crushed. I think maybe 2 hard hit balls I remember watching, but they made him work for everything, and they put the ball in play. And like you said, his command wasn't pinpoint by any means, and he got flustered out there, which was interesting to see too. He was upset about the balk, he was upset about the strike calls, he was getting kind of moody on the mound, and you're like, okay, this is what we need to see. You need to have this kind of adversity to see how you can handle it. And I imagine we'll see. This is a couple iffy outings in a row, and we'll like to see him bounce back. One of the things, I haven't sat down and looked at it, but he hasn't really pitched a ton of innings consecutively in any season yet. He's had injuries at kind of the beginning of the year or the middle of the year. I guess he did last year, right? Coming back from the injury, but it was only 75 innings or so, 80 total. So it's just curious to see how he handles the workload total.
Yeah, and they're starting to stretch him out. We're seeing him throw 90 plus, topped 100. Melton threw over 100 pitches, I think, on Saturday. I think it was Saturday. Yeah. So, and Melton and Ham will get the Ham, but both of them just have that funny homeritis thing going, where no one hits them unless they run into one and crush it. This is odd. But yeah, I feel no different about Job. And I don't feel that much different about Melton. You'd like to see Melton come on and get a little more precise as we go down the stretch here. He's kind of had not the year that like Ty Madden has had, but a similar year where, there hasn't been huge steps forward. They're working on little things. He hasn't really, taken a step yet. But overall, I still big fan of Melton. And he racked up 8 punch outs, had the velocity. It's nice. The velocity, I kind of feel like has been building a little bit more as the season. Season's gone on, where he's a little bit steadier, 95 and 97, 98. So yeah, altogether not bad. Just a tougher opponent than we're used to, I think there.
Yeah, and I like him too. He is a guy, like, if we talk about, Toledo needs help with pitching, but he's a guy that I think would probably get pretty ugly up in Toledo, just based on what we've seen from other guys going up to AAA. And so I don't mind him, sticking it out here and trying to iron some things out in AA. Plus, you're going to need somebody to pitch for them too. But yeah, who knows? I mean, we may see a number of promotions towards the end of the year, but yeah, for now, Erie has. I see people saying Erie's kind of boring without Hao Lee, and that's just true. That's the way the system kind of shook out, right? And West Michigan was like this until suddenly they got this giant influx of talent. And now they're super fun and they're excited and everybody's happy again. But Erie has been, had these veteran guys who've been there for 2+ years, and there just wasn't, and there still isn't really anybody pushing them. We won't see that until next year, probably pushing to make their way to the SeaWolves. So it's I think Roger's talked about before. It's a really veteran team. They know how to play. They play well. They win, but it's not exciting from a prospect standpoint.
No,
yeah.
And
again, maybe they'll get Ham. You think they might get Ham or someone like that down the stretch, especially because they be in the postseason. Maybe they'll kind of juice the roster toward the end.
Yeah, maybe Max Clark will be up there. It's just as far as like there's a lot of like that. There's a lot of people are saying that Max Clark should belong in AA. Pump the brakes a little bit.
Got to go inside the numbers there, folks.
Yep, exactly, and that's what Chris just did there. 30% K rate there for Max Clark. Went 0 for 4, I believe, yesterday. But I mean. By the way, for the first time all season, the Whitecaps are over 500 at 51 and 50 heading into the week. Of course, that means first half, second half, but they're in the playoff race. So this will be an interesting stretch for the Whitecaps as they come home starting tomorrow. And the announcement that the starter that they got from the Rangers,
Montalvo,
will start on Wednesday, per Dan Hasty. And they had the pretty different broadcast too. Emily Walden was on there over the weekend, so that's cool for Emily to get some airtime and what have you. So
they were down in Fort Wayne.
Yeah, down in Fort Wayne. So but yeah, Dan. So Dan, yeah, that's right. I forgot Dan was down there. Dan Fernandez in our chat said he said the ball sounds loud off his bat for a guy who's not huge, and that's a good sign there. And Clark's speed, we've talked about that numerous times, has been tremendous. And Fort Wayne is not as prospect heavy as it used to be, but still, that's still a pretty good ball club. But they got their work cut off for it against Beloit this week.
I think I think that slide is outdated. I updated it some more. You may need to refresh it somehow because I've got Lorenzo and all the new guys on there too. I just left because I finished Lakeland now. Sorry. But
so I'll remove that and
hopefully it worked. I didn't waste this time ignoring you guys and typing.
You're good.
But yeah, yes. Kevin says, is 556 BABIP really high? I don't know if yes, it is. Sometimes you can get really high BABIPs in the minors with guys who slap the ball on the ground and are very fast. Like a Jake Robson used to run like 440, 450 plus or whatever. But anything over 500 is absurd. It means that there's been an extreme amount of luck. Now Max Clark is hitting the ball well. He's got really good bat control and seems to be able to punch the ball wherever he wants to. But right now, he is getting very lucky, and he's not walking a ton and he's striking out a fair amount. But it's not reflected in his stats yet because everything he's putting into play is falling for a hit. So that's what it says there. And we went out there for Clark and McGonigal's debut, and I was telling all the Whitecaps people, I'm like, yeah, I think Clark's going to struggle a little bit. I think McGonigal's going to hit the ground running, and it's been the other way around. But the underlying stats indicate that's. McGonigal hasn't been overwhelmed at all. He's got like a 16% walk rate and a 4.5% strikeout rate so far. And he's starting to square up the ball again. And it's been a lot of fun.
It'll be interesting to see though, because Clark, was the one who kind of struggled this season early on for about a month, and was fine, was contributing and not overwhelmed or anything, but he really wasn't performing that well. And then kind of Colt Keith, he made the adjustments, started taking the ball the opposite way a little bit more, and then just started wrecking shop. So maybe the same thing will happen here. And if he got lucky the first month at West Michigan, maybe by the time he figures it out, he'll just carry it forward and it'll look like he just had this absolute god tier second half, which may not necessarily be the case. But I mean, he looks fine. He's not overwhelmed at all either. And he's had a bunch of multi-hit games and stuff like that, and contributing on offense and defense and doing all of his things. But there hasn't really been anything yet that kind of looked like he made a jump of any sort yet. Yeah, a lot of balls dropping in for him. Chasing a little bit, swinging pretty aggressively.
And, the home run, by the way, was 112 at 24 degrees. Thank you, Mitchell. I just double checked that. I thought it was 102. It was 112.
No, that was the hardest hit ball that he had 3 balls above 107 in Lakeland, and this was the hardest he's hit the ball so far.
When Dan posted that, I was kind of like, really?
That was the big, the big question with McGonigal was there going to be power there? And that was the main question. The other question is, could he stick at shortstop? And the power, it might not manifest itself into a ton of home runs, although I'm still crossing my fingers there that he's going to eventually just become the pull god. But yeah, that kid can hit and he can hit the ball hard. So I'm not worried about that at all. And it's fun to see that he crushed that ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
and he just creates such a good angle to so many different types of pitches, and hits the ball hard, all over the zone, different types of pitches. Tried to watch more of his defense, and he's still making some errors. I don't know if he's going to stick at shortstop either, but he does look to me like he can. He's not going to be like a plus defensive shortstop, but we'll see how that develops. Kind of feels like, how bad does he want it? If he's dead set on playing shortstop and just continues to work like a madman at it, he'll probably be fine, at least in the early part of his career. But I don't know. We'll see. But that was kind of where the power concerns come in too, because it's if he's not going to play shortstop, then he does need to hit for some power. And I just kind of shut my mouth when I saw that 111.08 or 0.8 pop up. I was like, huh.
Yeah. I was like,
okay.
Gravy. That's
way more juice than I thought was in there at this point, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you got to remember 19-year-old. So, I mean, that was, and that, those exit velocities, that's like the calling card for Tyrone Lorenzo. Their big trade acquisition, the main guy, along with Sweeney and the Flaherty deal. And he's a guy who's hit the ball. I think he's got exit velocities multiple over 114 before. That's legit juice. But
by the way, did you guys sorry to interrupt, but did you guys see that teams their draft picks were assigned just now?
I did not. Where is that in the transactions?
Yeah. Boom.
Let's see.
So hopefully we break it before Tigers Turk Boil does.
Let's see. All right. Josh Randall to the FCL, Michael Massey, Bryce Rayner, Owen Hall, Scheffelbein, all to the FCL Tigers. Now the FCL Tigers are not playing anymore.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. I got excited for a second.
But but they do have a roster, I think, and I don't know how that works with all the domestic reserve things, but that's interesting. I will say, Lynn Henning wrote a nice article that kind of explained what exactly is going on with the new draft picks. You should go get your subscription for $1 a month or whatever. But basically, I did that. There's a bridge league, which amounts to basically extended spring training again, where the teams in that kind of pod in Florida, which include the Blue Jays and the Yankees and the Phillies and the Pirates, I think, are playing 3 games a week with their recent draft picks and their leftover Florida Complex League guys, just so they keep playing. We won't see any box scores. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll get some video from people down there in Lakeland, but it's not going to be, maybe the Phillies will hook us up. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But yeah, that's what they're doing. Who knows if maybe one of those guys looks like crazy good, they might bump them up to Lakeland, but that doesn't seem to be the MO of this current administration.
especially the pitchers, and that's mostly who are the key guys. I assume they're not going to do that with Rayner, although never know. Maybe if he's just killing everybody, you'd just be like, all right,
yeah,
give it a shot, kid, because he'll start there next year, you'd assume. So that'd be fun.
Sure.
It'd be nice to know he was doing well at least, but yeah, it's just kind of like behind the black curtain there. Just kind of scrimmage game situations.
Were you tweeting that out, Raj?
I was gonna tweet it out, but essentially
Yeah,
I didn't
go
know
for
what this but I didn't know what to put on there. Like they've just been assigned.
They've
essentially.
officially, they've officially been assigned to teams. It doesn't necessarily mean much, but yeah, this will probably be followed by a bunch of people getting cut, unfortunately. But this is the way it has to go. This is the way. But yeah, what were we're still talking about West Michigan. Oh, we were about to get into Lorenzo.
Yes, and by the way, Dom, let me answer Dom's question once and for all, because this is just look. Vargas, if Miguel Vargas was part of a trade, the Tigers didn't ask for him, or they didn't want the Dodgers weren't willing to give it up. As far as for Connor Norby, same thing.
Yeah.
I think the Tigers need a little more of those two than to put them over the top, quite frankly. There's so many in terms of starter depth. I can go on and on, but
anyway.
They're both still giant question marks.
Yeah.
Vargas has
not that big a fan of either.
Yeah, he's hit 200 since he's called up.
He's got 450 career plate appearances. He's got an 80 WRC plus. He plays second base in the outfield, maybe third base. Although I think he started off as third base in the minors, wasn't terribly good there. And Norby, Norby has done some good things in the minors. He's also got a pretty high strikeout rate, and there's another second baseman who probably has to move to the outfield.
Mm-hmm.
They're interesting prospects. They're interesting names, but yeah, like I don't know that they were what the Tigers wanted, or if they were what the Tigers could get, even if they did want them.
Flaherty is definitely worth more than a lot more than Norby, but from Baltimore's perspective, they've got Burns potentially leaving. They wanted someone that came with team control, and that's seemingly what they prioritize. So yeah, you just don't always match up. It's like trying to convince JD Martinez to sign here as a free agent and come hit at Comerica Park again. It's probably like, hell no, I'm not coming back there. And you never know that. You just figure like, oh, we can sign whoever we want. We just outpay them by a little bit. It doesn't work that way. So.
Anyway, Tyrone Lorenzo, their new catching prospect. You got to see a little bit of everything from him. He doesn't have a great feel for contact, which doesn't sound great, but it's not like he's I don't know how to describe it without saying, like, he's not a free swinger by any means, right? Like he stays in the zone, and that's why he's going to take a ton of walks, and he works deep counts, and so he's going to take a lot of strikeouts. And when he does make contact, the ball's going to be hit very hard. So I don't know, and like you hope a guy like that. He's a switch hitter. Sometimes switch hitters take longer to develop. There's a thought that maybe you just have him bat from, I don't know if the right side is his more dominant side or left side. I was looking into it, but he
maybe left, if I remember right.
Maybe down the road you get him to stick on one side and you take him off catcher and he's just a first baseman and you let him mash. But they're trying to thread the needle now, and the the number one rule in the minors, right, is you don't make a guy move off a position until he absolutely has to, until you need him. That's why you see, Justin Henry Malloy play at third base a ton, and then in the outfield a ton, and he gets to the majors, and they play him at DH like 90% of the time. They're like, we just want the bet. And he's been another fun addition to that offense. Like we said, it's suddenly they've got like three really interesting hitters, and then you got Roberto Campos, who's still hanging out, who he's the old man on the team now at 21. Actually, I don't even know. He might be younger than Lorenzo. Now that I think about it. I have to look at that.
Actually, Lorenzo's numbers have been better this year against left-handed pitching for sure. Okay.
And now, you'd love him to be a left-handed hitting catcher, right? That's that would be great. But again, you don't give up. Workman didn't give up on switch hitting until 2.5 years of not being able to hit right-handed. So give it time.
Even those times where he should have done that ago, but I digress. But
like I said, you don't necessarily have to give up on it until you have to give up on it.
Yeah, and as far as catching, we just don't know what the future is going to hold. It seems to me like it's going to be a challenge system, and at this point I'm starting to feel like they're not ever going to want to use like the full ABS. I just feel like there's just so much resistance inside the game, and the more I've seen them use it, the less I like it myself, because the game has just never been played that way. Which is funny. Like, okay, we're going to play it strictly by the rule book. Wait, this is bizarre. We've never done this before, but I don't necessarily like it. So, like the theory I had for a while that maybe framing would just kind of go away entirely probably isn't going to hold up. So, and that doesn't bode so well for a guy like Lorenzo either. But some of that is just technique. And I do think the Tigers teach catching really well. Like, that one that, that breaking ball from Colin Fields that got away from him that you guys posted, you can't reach for that backhanded. You got to slide over. That's just
yeah.
I mean, maybe he just can't, but that's technique rather than his hands are bad. So we'll see.
Yeah,
it's all about the bat though. Same as Brycinho. Hopefully one of those two guys becomes an absolute beast at the plate. That's all you can.
We rarely like to post videos of guys making mistakes and stuff like that. Occasionally I'll post a video of I don't even know if I have of Jace Young making an error at third. I may need to do an old school. I might have to do the old Nick Quintana and put together a clip of all his errors just so people can see them. But that's not fair because I can't go through and make, he's made plenty of plays there too. I'm not going to go through and get every single chance he's had this year. But I do think I just feel like it's, more honest to show the areas of struggle occasionally too. But anytime you show a little clip, it's not telling the full story of anything. So we try not to, force the narrative too much. I just wanted people to see this is technically a wild pitch, but that's something that he should stop 99% of the time by sliding over. And he just didn't. And, one of the things with him is he's just a really big kid. He's listed at 6'3", 195. I think he's probably 230. And he may not be able to move terribly well, but a lot of it, like you said, is technique. A lot of just catching the ball sometimes is an issue for him and Brycinho. And that's repetitions and technique and all that stuff. But I don't know. It's a fun high upside player with a relatively low floor, but that's what you get for 10, 11 starts of a rental pitcher.
So Eddie's calling him a bust. 30% K rate. Actually, K rate was, fair.
Exact same swing as Baez.
36%.
No.
Yeah, total bust out. Okay. All right, cool. Look, the bottom line is
that's too bad. It was a fun week with him anyway.
Yeah, 20 years old and just his first year high A. And there's always a steep learning curve with catchers.
Well,
look, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I say the Midwest League is not a great place to hit. Look what Dalton Rushing did in high A last year. What did he hit? He hit 220.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's a matter of where you're playing and some tough environments and how your skills are. And we talked about this.
Turn 21. My bad.
We with
Dylan his Dingler. Age 20 season.
Yeah.
Dingler didn't hit.
Yeah,
for
Dingler
2+
took
years.
A long time. Yep.
It happens all the time with guys who are catchers because there's so much to work on that you can't dedicate as much time as you might need to hitting, or you are, but it's just it's exhausting. You've been squatting for 20 minutes or whatever, and now you have to get up and hit. I don't know. Give it time.
I don't feel any need to defend Tyron Lorenzo yet. Let the man play. He's just turned 21. He's got a long ways to go. We all know that. And if they keep him, playing catcher, all the work is going to be on that side of things, by and large for the next 2 years. So,
everyone, and by the way,
give up.
Everybody, Parker Meadows was bunting. Parker Meadows was bunting for hits. Of course, he was struggling. That was.
I think he might be.
That was a completely. Yeah, that was. Oh, okay. I was going to say that was a completely different era.
Sorry,
that was a
let's just move on.
Yeah.
Anything else about West Michigan? I do want to mention Yosber Sanchez because he's been pitching very well as of late, and we don't really talk about the Whitecap pitching often too much outside of Jaden Ham. I just want to give some props to him, and also Makano, who both starts last week didn't walk anybody, and it was again he's not a guy who's going to be the strikeout king or anything, or whatever, but he's been giving Whitecaps some consistent innings, so I just want to give them a little props for that. So, All right, Flying Tigers this week.
Not a whole lot going on in Lakeland these days, unfortunately. There was
weather too. There's some bad weather as well.
Yeah, there's a hurricane, I believe.
Yeah.
They lost all their good players, and now they're getting rained out, and no one cares. And Andrew Sears and Jake Miller can just strike out tons of dudes, and no one's going to pay any attention anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, we didn't get Gabriel Reyes at all. I think he probably was supposed to start the game that was rained out, and then Rainer Castillo, the other fun arm down there, hit the Tigers. Pitch limit for an inning, and so they had to pull him out after 29 pitches in less than an inning, so we didn't get to see him. So yeah, it was a bummer. There were some I don't know if you guys saw the clip that George Lombard, the play that George Lombard made down there. They were playing Tampa, and Lombard is their shortstop, and he made like an Ozzie Guillen diving stop and throw. It was amazing. Would have been nice to get him, but
I would have loved him for Flaherty. Sure, yeah. Nice to see Bruce and Wheezy. Didn't walk anybody. That's all they need to do. Stop walking people.
If they throw strikes, it's pretty nasty stuff. But yeah, I agree. That's what low A is all about. Maybe we'll see some of those guys in that bridge league pumping. There's some of the pitchers this year that they drafted, like Massey from Wake Forest, only threw like 45 innings this year, so that he could theoretically come back in and pitch. It's just that long layoff between the end of the college season and the start of pro ball. Unless they're in sort of a regimented throwing program, it's tough to know if want to ramp them back up or not.
I keep thinking, like, why don't I mean, I guess I know why, but you'd think they would eventually just push the college season back a little bit to kind of match the draft up again a little bit better. Because it's just like the season ends and then there's like this whole long lag time where, okay, all these dudes are sitting, the playoffs go on, and then there's still like another, bunch of weeks until we finally get to the draft.
It was just dumb that they moved the draft in the first place. It used to be in the, the middle of June.
It had its own, own thing, really. Yeah.
And then they go and cram it in with everything else. It's the Futures Game, the All-Star Weekend, the home run. It's a high school home run derby, a high school All-Star games. They put it all together. The one I've heard, the suggestion I've heard that I really liked was do it the same weekend as the College World Series, and do it there.
Oh yeah.
And then because that's still cool. In June, and I don't know, it just would make more sense because there's like the scouting, calendar. It's tough for guys to be, they're still trying to scout for this year's draft. Meanwhile, they should be watching next year's guys, but I don't know. These are deep.
So it's hard on them. Yeah, it's hard on them, and it's hard for everybody who covers the team because all of a sudden, like you've got like in 1 week, it's like all this stuff happens, and then it's like okay, the trade deadline immediately after. So yeah. It's just kind of a weird. I don't know. It's just a weird pattern where like the early part of the season plays out, and then it just feels like you're just drifting, waiting until the All-Star break. And then everything happens in 2 weeks. And then you're back to nothing really to look forward to unless your team's a contender, for a couple more weeks. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't love it either. It'd be great if they kind of found a way to spread that out and give it its own space.
Do you guys think, though, they're doing it because just in the case of they don't want to start these players in certain cases for example, there's certain teams, except for the Angels, of course, because Angels are a different breed altogether. I know that the top pick by Cleveland's already started. I think he's already in high A already. And so
Zana,
is it certain teams just, why is there such a delay? That's the thing that I don't understand is there's already players already playing. And meanwhile, the Tigers are just like, I don't know, we're in no rush or anything. To me, it's kind of bizarre. I don't understand. You would think you want to tell your minor league affiliates, by the way, like Lakeland, hey, here's some good. I know Rainer might not be a chance to play Lakeland as an example, but you want to make them competitive, right? You think you want to. I don't know.
A lot of it is just who you draft. Like last year, they took a bunch of college bats that they brought right in, like Peck and Jarvis and Max Anderson and all those guys. I think started playing relatively quickly. It's the pitchers and the high school bats that are tougher to filter in because there's more to do for the high school players, and the pitchers might have not been pitching competitively for 6 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Alex said, or Alan said, I miss the New York State Penn League as well. Like that just seemed like the perfect venue to just a short season. It's only going to be like 8 weeks or something. We put all the new draft picks or any kids that were kind of like complex league standouts, like you'd throw Fran Yerber Montilla in there at this point probably. but yeah, they just, they just don't want to carry all these kids. They don't want to pay these kids. They don't want to, I don't know. They just feel like, that they can trim it way down now and it's not going to really hurt anything. And then you see like, more and more the independent leagues are actually getting like some kind of semi-decent guys who end up, getting picked up and signed to minor league deals and becoming undrafted, free agent types who, probably aren't going to ever make it or anything, but become like, pretty solid org players. I mean, Patrick Lee so far is, like looking like, oh, this is a really toolsy guy to get out of the independent league. I don't know if he'll ever hit, but yeah. So, I just think they're happy to kind of, foist, those extra players off that they don't think are ever going to do anything and just, let the independent league try to do something about it, I guess. Or, hey, you can go to Japan or Korea, I guess, or Australia.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of Japan or Korea, that story with Brandon Dixon, the tweet he had last week, that was crazy.
Yeah, he if people didn't see it, he basically said that he had a contract. It was going to be the most he's ever paid to play pro baseball, and he thought the Tigers would let him out, let him go do it. And the Tigers said, sure, but you have to like pay us $1 million or something like that.
They have to buy him out from us. Like,
yeah. And then he said the GM told him that he was, part of the future. And it was like a couple months later, told him that they were, DFAing him or whatever. And, part of that, like, part of me wonders if like Al Avila was like, telling Chris Ilitch, like, yeah, he's a part of the future. Yeah. Like, of course he is. Like, because he just was trying to prove that they were getting better or something. But I don't know. The whole situation sounded tough, and I don't know. The life of a professional athlete and a professional baseball player doesn't seem all that glamorous at times, unless you're a star. And that's nothing compared to like NFL, right, where there are no guaranteed contracts. They can just cut you whatever they want. I mean, there's money and stuff, but it's tough out here.
Yeah, I didn't think Brandon Dixon's story was like necessarily. I mean, the most surprising part of it was that he had a $1.5 million offer to play somewhere else. I actually thought, no offense to Brandon Dixon, but I mean, they're mercenary, and it's only gotten worse. I mean, Al Avila was probably a guy who was regarded as sort of like a, friendly old scout type who like understood, what the kids go through and could probably talk to you about those kinds of things. But when it comes down to it, he's under pressure. He wasn't doing well at that particular time. I know I was just jumping on his head and just beating up on him. And who else? You guys and Fennec. Fennec was the only one of the beat writers who wasn't just like completely rolling over like a sad pup, just like, oh, be nice to me, Al. Feed me stories. So, I mean, there was still pressure because fans were fed up. The deal hadn't worked out. And I don't think that even matters. They'll do that. They'll do that to anybody. They'll tell you if they don't want to get rid of you right now, they'll get rid of you later. And it doesn't matter what you thought might happen or what they told you might happen at all. So it's just a hard business that way, Yeah,
I know that I think they change their mind all the time. Sometimes they don't, not even sure. I think a lot of times they want to hoard players just in case. And it sucks. It sucks.
Well,
for
and Al
Brandon.
wasn't doing a whole lot of like, trying to find. It was not like they were working that hard to find talent,
But Brandon Dixon seems to be running a pretty nice street sweeper business now, which I'm kind of jealous of because I've always, ever since I was a little kid, like the street sweeper was my like second favorite thing, and it was only slightly behind the ice cream truck. If the street sweeper was coming, I was getting super pumped. But so good for him.
Yeah, I think he's doing well.
Yeah, I was just gonna say he's not a real estate agent or selling insurance, so there you go.
Yeah. That's something fun.
Just think about that as I think about that. But we did get a question on Twitter about Javier Soto. How is he doing in DSL?
Oh, Osorio?
Osorio. Yep.
Yeah, he's finally producing this year. He's hitting for power and stealing bases and stuff. His strikeout rate, I'm going to look it up right now because he was striking out at like a 40% clip the first 2 years down there. So strikeout rate is down 10% to 24%. He's got 3 home runs, 13 steals. He's hitting 268 with a 70% walk rate. I haven't checked to see his defense. He was striking out all the time and making tons and tons of errors before. And of course, we don't see him. I haven't seen any clips of him. I couldn't tell you what he looks like. He was just supposed to be really tooled up and the best player from that international draft class. And that's the same class as Briseño. And I'm looking now. Let's see how many errors this year.
Like
9.
so many. Yeah.
10 errors this year.
30.
Had 11 last year.
Is that 40 games they played about? 30?
Yeah.
39? 39.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's
that's not good. But
his
they're
third
young, so there's a lot of errors.
Generally speaking, if a guy spends 3 seasons playing in a foreign rookie league, he's not going to amount to anything, unfortunately. But who knows? You know, won't write everybody off. But he's. I haven't been paying a ton of attention to the DSL. I was just looking today. The DSL 2 is tied for the first place in their division, and I don't know how many more games they have. Probably 15 more or so. So could have another playoff team in the org. But there's some interesting names down there. We talked about them a little bit last week. Some guys producing, but we really never know until they get to the state side, and even then, we don't get to see them in rookie ball much. So it's tough to know for sure.
Yeah, a lot of those, a lot of ones were contributors to the FCL complex team. So that's a good sign right there.
Yeah, a ton of those guys were, Juan Hernandez, Anibal Salas, Franyo Montilla, Enrique Jimenez. Those are all guys that were, in the DSL last year, and they came up and were part of a championship team. So that's the one thing we've been wanting forever and ever, right? Is the Tigers to build a real legit international pipeline where they're getting talent from another source. And some of these guys are showing promising signs, but again, if we're talking 5-6 years down the road, like Winsel Perez, right? It was 8 years from when he signed to when he made the big leagues. So we like to keep an eye on him, but
no new news lately about the the new Dominican complex or anything too. I mean, hopefully that will kind of spark a resurgence there, but it doesn't seem like it's pending anytime in the next year or two, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Here's what a good tidbit here from Michael in heading article. By the way, happy 50 years. Celebrate 50 years in the business today. The development people said that he had not played a lot of ball growing up. He needed to learn about baseball. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean you see that sometimes in other sports, right? Like they'll football teams will get some random 6'6" dude who was playing soccer and just got too big. I'm like, he's a super athlete. Let's give him a try. Baseball feels like tough for me. I mean, Brandon, you brought it up a couple, weeks ago about just taking all the safeties and cornerbacks and seeing what you could do. But and having not faced any sort of like legit high level pitching, I think would probably take a long time for you to get comfortable doing that. So maybe that's true. Maybe he's just a guy who's going to take a little longer, but you don't usually have a luxury of doing that with guys from, the international market.
Yeah, that's the other problem is that, the time crunch just gets so fast, like Barcino will be on the, Rule 5 eligible in what, 2 years? So,
I think so.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just a crunch that way. It's just really kind of weak the way they have that set up. It'd be much better if guys signed at 17 or 18, but here we are.
All right, and it looks like the DSL playoffs start August 22nd. So there's 14 games left or so.
Yeah. So another question that came about too on Twitter was who do you see the Tigers about Lakeland or going to Lakeland from the draft? And so I was probably Strong, Penny, Hayden, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe RJ Sales. Who knows?
Yeah. So you're the two infielders. You said Penny from Notre Dame, Hadeen from Cal. He was one of the Cal Northridge, one of those Cal schools out there.
Yeah.
And then Strong was the outfielder. Is he New York area?
I believe, New York area. You're talking about Strong, yeah.
But yeah, those are the college bats. So UC Irvine, thank you. Yes,
thank you. So the question, someone came out here about Jack Diaz is still out with an injury, I believe.
I believe he's on the full season injured list now.
Yeah.
Whereas Briseño is on the 60-day injured list, so he could technically come back. Once you get put on the full season injured list, you can't come back. I'm not expecting to see Briseño. I think they said it was a 4 to 6 month injury.
Yeah.
Why I wouldn't push it with a knee and a catcher, but
yeah.
Yep, exactly. And get him 100% right for next year. Yeah. Yep, afraid so.
So
and maybe that ends his that ends the catching experiment. I don't know. We'll just see what they think.
Yeah.
There's as far as this goes, in terms of the Detroit Degenerates, I talk about the Sky Harris. Yeah, he was definitely rushed with the trade. Some what we heard and what have you. So even if the guys they acquired, regardless, the Tigers scouting department really probably bailed out Harris in terms of finding out guys that they could contribute. So
yeah,
I mean, I can also bring back the Justin Verlander trade though, and just say like these other teams just screwed up.
Yeah.
Like the Astros gave that package for Kikuchi. Like if they didn't offer that for Flaherty, they're morons. And and the Yankees didn't go do a damn thing. So you can yell at Harris about this too, but the other team has to actually want to try and win and pay the price. So it is what it is. But I like Lorenzo. I know he needs work, but the bat has plenty of potential. I like Sweeney a bit. I'm just kind of disappointed they didn't manage to land like a pretty good pitching prospect in that deal as well. They probably should have. So
there was rumors about Will Warren being a name for the Yankees.
Something that I'm sure this happens all the time where you have deals put together and something doesn't work out and falls through, and it's not normally as dramatic as it was last year with Erod. It's more usually like this, where I heard they got offered that, they turned it down because they wanted something more, and they ended up not getting what they want. But the scouts do a ton of work. They have stuff on all these guys. I'm sure there's stuff they like about all these guys. I'm sure there's a lot of trades where they didn't get the guy they wanted, and they end up getting a guy who's better than the guy they wanted. It just happens. I think who knows if the Tigers wanted Reese Olson for Daniel Norris. They may have wanted somebody else and settled for Reese Olson, right?
Right. And sometimes, it's the smaller deal that works out better in terms of value swap. Like the Andrew Chafin deal looked great to me. I really like Montalvo in particular. Yeah. Getting him for, a year and a half of Andrew Chafin is pretty good to me. So, hopefully that'll kind of make up for it a little bit. I would say like the return on that was like a C. I think I would give him like a C grade. It was like a satisfactory deal, but not impressive at all.
Yeah, and like I said, I think Joseph's going to be a very good sell. I think he's going to be the fact is the velocity has increased. It's going to be hopefully third or fourth starter in rotation. And again, we'll see what happens on Wednesday when he first makes his first Whitecaps appearance. So, but on that note, thank you so much for watching and listening this evening. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or on Twitter, apparently at YouTube. So we have like a chat thing, like a view meter on my top of my left here. So top of my screen says 1219, but on YouTube it's I think 96. So thanks to everybody. Go ahead.
The one here, it just never goes down. So I just assume that's all the people who have checked in or come back or whatever and total views or whatever. And the one on YouTube is probably live. But either way, it's nice to have people watching, right? We appreciate it.
Yeah. And again, and we don't mind people's opinions. I mean, Eddie came in here with a flamethrower and just that's fine. As long as you're not trolling or being a dick to people, I don't care. I really don't care.
It's just what I will just say this about Eddie. It's really easy to say everybody sucks because most players don't make it. I say, I don't like him because this, I don't like him because that. It's a lot harder to find the guys and say, hey, this might work. So that's all.
Yeah. That's why, like I said, I always get so excited about Cole Keith because it's one of those ones where we were pretty early on that and we're crazy to think he was the number one prospect. And here we are. So, but if you have, again, go to Tiger. I'm sorry, go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, no, I'm good. I just agree.
So
I'm caught up. I'm sorry. I'm caught up with stuff on our site too. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So Tigers, again, 3 games here starting tomorrow in Seattle. First game's at 9:45. And then on Thursday is the Motor City Metrics podcast. And I think there's going to be some changes on that coming up here in the next few months on that. So more on that at another time. And for myself, Brandon and Chris, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. And stay classy, everybody. Have a good night.